Welcome to the Earth Your Wow podcast, brought to you by Reusable, providing a better way to buy cardboard boxes. We're your hosts, Jack and Ellie.
This is the podcast where we talk to industry experts and change makers to try to answer the question, how do we make our businesses better for people and the planet? Today we're chatting to Matt Price, sustainable innovator and founder of Medicus Caps. Medicus is driving real change in the healthcare sector through their Medicus Reusable Scrub Caps, a low-impact alternative to disposable surgical caps that cuts waste, reduces CO2 emissions, and helps hospitals save money. Thanks for joining us today, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Wondered, Matt, if to start with, wondered if you could kind of explain how Medicus Caps are kind of challenging the status quo in your industry, and also like what was the aha moment that led to your creation?
Yeah, so it was me and my wife Romy that set up the company originally, actually, so we could start a family. Basically, she was working as a surgical nurse, and so very familiar with seeing lots of surgical waste. And obviously, a big moment that I'm sure everyone can relate to is, of course, good old COVID, when obviously then there was lots of disposable masks and disposable hats and all sorts of things. So before then, we had already come on the idea of reusable hats, not only as like a single issue kind of product, like just sustainability, but also like a value add as well in terms of having names and roles on hats, having different colors to identify different people in different roles, and also just generally the fact of sizing. Realistically, this is also not really. It's let's say coming back into trend, because obviously a lot of stuff back in the day was reusable, and we slowly moved away to this more convenience-based model of just disposable, because it feels more convenient in terms of just I take a hat, I use the hat, I throw away the hat's gone forever, hooray, I don't have to kind of worry about it anymore. So for us, once we started looking more and more into it, not only from a sustainability side, but also just a cost factor size, there's a kind of sticker price, which everyone might know of, like a single disposable hat has a price, just like any item. But then there's all the kind of hidden stuff behind it. There's the storage, there's the management, there's, okay, well, you have these amount of hats, but how many orders? How many deliveries are you getting in? So we were just finding it essentially a more and more compelling space to get into. And because the people obviously have different amounts of hair, different size heads, all of that kind of thing, there's also more challenges around getting an actual good fitting hat. Because if you're going to convince people to swap to a reusable option, then there's nothing worse than having a kind of Groundhog's Day effect of just wearing the same ill-fitting hat over and over again forever. Yay. So that hopefully gives a bit of context as to why we've kind of run with it and kept going.
And you kind of touched on, obviously, reusable ones, as you would expect, hopefully lower impact than single-use ones, and kind of the cost saving. But can you maybe explain for anyone listening, like roughly how much better they are when it comes to impact and cost?
Yeah. So for us, because we do all of the manufacturing and we make everything to order, so unlike a traditional manufacturer that would just have a product and just basically try and make as many of them as possible for as cheap as possible and then sell them, we are able to make to order, so we're able to also carbon cost. So essentially, apart from growing our own cotton and making our own thread, we do everything else in the chain. So that it works out roughly for like a standard hat around 330 grams of carbon for one hat, and typically someone would have 5 for a year, and so. Compared to a disposable hat, each disposable hat, they're obviously a lot lighter, a lot thinner, but they're still around 20 grams of carbon per hat. So essentially within kind of a month, you've already become kind of carbon negative in terms of that trade-off. And then it just continues to go further because the hats last a long time. And even factoring in washing as well, which is obviously going to be the main element of emissions for this, because you can fit around 240 hats in one kind of normal, let's say, domestic washing machine. You can obviously then arbitrage the kind of carbon content of the actual wash cycle as well. So it becomes very efficient. Unlike, for instance, washing, I don't know, if you imagine your bedding or something, you're only washing effectively one bed's worth of clothes of laundry. And so, yeah, it actually becomes quite economical in that way as well.
Nice. So when it comes to the NHS and single-use plastic, how bad is the problem?
I think the problem has especially been exacerbated, obviously, since COVID, because a lot of this stuff has been a lot of disposable hats were obviously purchased, and even up until I think the start of this year, like some of the supplies that people had originally bought in COVID were still being used. So I think we're in an interesting cross point now where a lot of trusts can actually make this kind of justification because there's also this idea of, well, the government, someone else bought it, right? So it's essentially free for the hospitals to use in terms of a disposable hat. And so because there's not that much tracking in terms of how many hats, do you accidentally pick up two? Does a box get lost? They only pretty much know how many they've ordered in. And then that's it. They just know, like, so we speak to people sometimes and they'll go, oh, well, I have 1,000 staff and last year we bought 3,000 hats. And then you're kind of thinking, well, if you need an average of about 2 hats a day for surgery, then that means that there's something short. If all these 1,000 people are meant to be in surgery, either they're all doing like 3 days worth of surgery or 1 day worth of surgery. Otherwise, there's something missing there. So I think there's a lot of like pieces of the puzzle coming together. And again, I think a lot of people are trying to get kind of easier kind of smaller sustainability projects going that involve the staff. So especially when you think of the NHS, typically what you're going to think of is let's change all the light bulbs, let's build a new hospital, and everyone can cycle to work. And then that's going to reduce most of our emissions. But a lot of it is going to fall back on scope 3 for like manufacturers like ourselves to basically try and offer not only competitive value, but again, that's sustainable or at least transparent, sustainable things. So we can start benchmarking and actually like moving the needle towards a kind of better direction.
Yeah, because we actually did a bit of research and we found that NHS England states that the NHS produces 133,000 tons of plastic waste each year, which sounds huge, doesn't it?
Yeah. And in terms of that global pie of like just emissions in general, healthcare is like 5% of like all emissions everywhere. And it's mad. So to be one tiny like point of trying to tackle that 5% is just as challenging.
But you say it's only a tiny point, but I suppose on the scale of the NHS, the opportunity not just to reduce waste, but to save money as well. I mean, that must be, it must be huge, if they could swap to your reusable scrub caps. I guess do you think it's fair to say maybe the NHS are maybe, paying hundreds of thousands of pounds on, single-use caps that maybe they don't need to pay? Do you think that's fair or?
Yeah. I think it's about like having the right, like trying to have like the right product for the right kind of situation. Because obviously there are going to be times where a reusable hat is not like if you're in a highly infectious case, there are going to be certain things. But I always give the analogy of like, well, you have a cafe or whatever in the hospital. Do you offer reusable cutlery? Do you offer reusable cups? I mean, it's that thing of like, oh, well, it's become really easy just to give everyone like a takeaway cup and, try and push it back onto the people to bring their own cup and all this kind of incentive. But really, there should just be the kind of appropriate tool for the job. We seem to average even just in disposable hats, which are, again, like anywhere from like 5 to 25 pence each. Most hospitals are averaging like £90 a year per person just in disposable hats. And again, because they're not tracking them, it's hard to figure it out. That's usually just averages of we bought this many, we have this many people in theatre. So I'm sure the amount of waste there is potentially even more. So I think it's just basically taking a more measured approach in terms of like what is the problem that you're that you're trying to solve. And again, it's quite easy to fall into, I mean, putting COVID aside, it's quite easy to fall into, well, this kind of does like most of the stuff. And if it's not quite right for, 20% of problems, well, that's fine. We'll just kind of deal with that because it's helping us in other areas. So I think, yeah, that combined with like, I think sustainability, or the conversations that I'm having more and more, is about sustainability is also about kind of business resilience as well. So obviously we saw lots of stuff with like supply chain issues and all of these things, because a lot of stuff is obviously being made offshore. So there's kind of lots of things coming into play. But thankfully, because they have such a strong mandate for net zero, I think they're going to be one of the more kind of aggressive places looking at every single area, and everything will essentially have not only an actual cost, but a carbon cost. So hopefully that moves stuff forward.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like this, like you said before, this has been going on for decades. Perhaps it's just a case of this is the way we've always done it. And obviously plastic is such a great material for being clinical, isn't it? Being clean, preventing spread of disease and things like that. Do you think, though, the NHS or hospitals in general, are becoming more susceptible to change? They're starting to think more sustainably. Is that your experience?
Yes, yeah, and I think it's interesting, especially with hats, because obviously we come from a lot of different areas. There's not really, even though it's kind of more usually in business to business, you would kind of know your customer, right? You would know like, oh, this person buys this thing to solve this problem. With the hats, it's interesting because you either get a complete like top-down approach of like management going like, let's audit all of our procurement and see, oh, we're wasting loads in this area, right? Let's, and it disseminates down. Or we see individuals, sustainability champions, that kind of thing, go, oh, well, I have a hat. I've bought the hat myself. And I think, we should roll this out wider because essentially it's cost saving for the NHS, right? It's obviously even cheaper for hospitals if people buy their own supplies. It's like buying your own uniform. It's obviously a lot cheaper than someone providing you a uniform. So, but because of obviously the other caveats of like sizes and styles, and even just an inclusion aspect of like if someone's wearing a hijab, if someone has large afro hair, trying to buy a one size fits all is I guess the greenwashing of the sizing industry, or however we want to draw the parallel. So yeah.
And why? So you were saying like traditionally, maybe a few decades ago, it was more reusable
Yeah.
products like
Yeah.
scrub caps or
Yeah, more like 70s, 80s, before, again, a lot of stuff came into being disposable, to being, by the time we've finished this procedure, basically we can just chuck everything in the bin. And again, it's also obviously for infection control reasons, because you obviously need a procedure to be able to wash these. You can't just be like, well, my scrubs are all dirty. Now I'm just going to put them in my backpack and I'll wash them when I get home, kind of thing. So the other thing is like being able to have a system in place, but we're also hoping that, because lots of hospitals are now coming on board, is once you've got a system for a small thing, then you're like, well, now I have this capacity, to make, reusable footwear or like other smaller items. So it becomes a gateway to a larger thing. And another thing, for example, is often people will say, okay, I want to switch to reusables tomorrow. I have, 10,000 staff. That suddenly means I need to buy, 1,000,000 hats. This is going to like bankrupt me. Da, 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 da. Whereas what they really need to realize is that if they're already spending this money on disposables, they just need to take a small section, do it team by team or whatever, and they can literally just transfer the budget. And as you start to save things, you don't need to do this like, crazy 180-degree, now we're going in a completely different direction. I think you can also sustainably kind of change into a more sustainable practice without having to completely upend a lot of people, because obviously there's so many different kind of cogs, especially in the NHS.
I think it can feel so overwhelming at times, can't it? So it's easy just to put it off, but it's like it's baby steps, isn't it?
I guess everything's so much more complex when you have so many more people involved. But it really sounds like, from what you're saying, like it is a massive opportunity to, yes, reduce impact, but also to save money. And, I don't really follow the NHS that closely, but I hear a lot about cost and investment
Yeah.
and money when it comes to the NHS. Do you think this is like maybe one of the biggest kind of blind spots when it comes to impact and costs? Because like you were saying, like the focus is often on like sort of bigger projects like new hospitals or light bulbs, but do you think this is a bit of a blind spot?
I think so, and I also think though that obviously anyone in the NHS, I'm sure, is working, crazy hours doing a mad amount of things. I mean, let alone saving people's lives. So they're definitely in a more hectic situation than me. But it's I think it's just having first being able to be aware that these options exist, similar to like when you find out, I don't know, that you can buy toothpaste in tablet form and you don't have to buy it in a tube and all these kind of things that again, just day to day, you kind of just get into a groove of whatever you're doing and you're like, well, this works. So the main thing is, and especially as we've seen with the NHS, is like, don't break the NHS, please. We need it so badly. So,
Very good
but
point.
I think with that, we do need more things where the kind of people that are on the ground floor have involvement in and it directly impacts them, like having a hat that you have to wear for like 12 hours a day fit well, that you've kind of chosen, that you've had some input in. Again, it becomes more about adding value than it does almost cost saving, because even if you're like net the same but you're able to add more value, then I think hopefully that's where businesses should be kind of focusing on.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice personal touch as well. The way that your people can choose their own design, and as you say, that they're very inclusive as well with the different styles. I think they're really great.
I think as well, like I don't know, did I see on your website some people might put like their name on their cap and
Yeah.
stuff
So
like that?
that's
Yeah.
usually what we do as well for the NHS as well, just because having name and role when everyone's all in blue, got a mask on, if you've ever had a procedure or anything before, people have to like introduce themselves. So you've got a team of, I don't know, 10, 20 people, and then they all do their switcheroo around the room. And I mean, unless you hear that person and they have a distinct voice, you're never really going to know, who they are again. As nice as they are introducing themselves, you're like, okay, yeah, yeah, who knows who's here. So for things like emergency situations and things, having like, a yellow hat be a student or whatever, then you can kind of clearly identify people. Um, so yeah, it's quite funny, really.
And I think you touched on this, but do you have any plans, or do you think there's scope to expand your range to tackle other single-use hospital items in the near future?
Yeah, so the ones that we're working at, which is more for labs, is reusable shoe covers. We kind of find that we fit into a lot of different sectors. It's quite funny, kind of being an almost like customized commodity in a way of like a cotton hat, but the fitting into like manufacturing, dentistry, veterinary. So we're working on lots of different things, even just down to the types of fabrics and again the use cases. So if you're in special cleaning zones that can't have any lint, or we just rolled out hemp scrub caps, trying to like further reduce the carbon footprint. So that's just rolled out in one hospital, because you can grow hemp to like nearly I think it's negative carbon. It's all like locked into the actual fabric. So again, disposed of properly, you can kind of see that all the way through to the end. So we're really just going to town. I found trying to unlock as much value in kind of one area as possible, even adding little bunny ears or like color in hats for pediatrics. Trying to really like go deep, I think is a real like business unlock, because I think these days it's great that it's so easy to like start things, but I think the question is like, how far down the rabbit hole can you go? I mean, I'm sure you guys must find it similar, right? People must be like, so cardboard boxes. And then and then you're like, it's similar how you imagine like scrub caps. So I'm sure you're like, scrub caps. I've never thought about scrub caps before. I've never.
Yeah, that's exactly what people say to us when we tell them that you can reuse them. But similar to what you said, like it was very common for businesses to reuse them, 1950s, 60s, 70s, but somehow became single use, just became the done thing. But it's interesting you mentioned with what you do with like manufacturers, because Like I spent a long time going to a lot of FMCG manufacturers all over the UK over the last few years, and every time we go, you go into the factory and you have to put on, hair nets, beard,
Yeah,
smooth things, shoe
yeah,
covers, and there's always this giant bin just full of
yeah,
hundreds, sometimes thousands of them. And it just makes you think how bad the waste is. I feel like it's something that gets a bit of like a hall pass sometimes. Like people just kind
Yeah.
of think, oh well, that's not
Yeah.
recyclable. This is for like, because it's for like hygiene purposes. It's like, well, you have to do single use.
Have you ever seen reusable ones?
No, but I know one company. They're one of the biggest, I think, the biggest factory in the UK for what they make, and they were asking me, can you help us with our hair nets? And I said, no, not really. And I think they actually cared about trying to reduce the waste, and they were looking. I think there's something you can do with TerraCycle. I think it is. But it was very expensive. I think it was going to cost them about £80,000 per year per factory just to have them recycled and not sent to landfill, which is what normally
yeah.
happens. So I think there's a huge opportunity with what you do in the manufacturing sector. Massive
I, I would
opportunity.
I would love to hear more as well from like people like Biffa and all those companies that actually like deal with the waste. I feel like similar to I guess how some people feel about the food industry and stuff. Like there just seems to be suddenly as soon as it's like gone into bin collection or whatever, there's is just things just disappear. But then and then you hear about the ramifications of it later on if it is popping up in another country or X, Y, and Z. I just think there needs to be more and more like transparency. And I think this is where like some of the sustainability, especially at the start when I was first getting in, because obviously I go to a load of sustainability events and I'm essentially like the scope 3 for most of the companies that were like in the room. They were all like consultants. And so they were like really worried about their scope 1 and 2. But that's kind of now feels like, table stakes. If you don't know that you're on a green tariff, you should probably switch to a green tariff kind of thing. So it's, I don't know. I think there just needs to be generally more transparency about, look, this is where we are right now. So now we can, now I can show you improvement. Whereas it feels like a couple of years ago, people were almost like scared to be like, oh, oh, I generate waste. I'm sorry, kind of thing. So it's nice to hear that the conversations are kind of moving forward to more like, oh, look, it's cost saving. It's like business resilience. It's you can also again story tell around like your products because you actually know more about your product than anyone else does, and so that lends people to be more like invested in your kind of brand because the amount of times you buy something in the shop and then you turn it around and it says do not recycle on it. It's like, well, that's a really poor decision. That like really did you have to like only make it out of this thing that can't be recycled at all? So I think there needs to be hopefully more people can come forward with their own little narrow niche and solve again one little piece of the puzzle so we can all actually get to a more sustainable future.
And I think we read about, do you have like an impact calculation thing?
Yeah.
For you? Yeah.
Yeah, so that was again just to like bring because often we kind of obviously need to make the business case for it. And again, the assumption is, well, 5p is more than, £5, and so this is going to be a straight up no. But then once you play out, generally if someone's working full time, they're generally going through around I think it's 464, just doubling the math there. Scrub caps as like a minimum if they're in surgery every single day. Again, not accounting for like waste or anything. So again, it comes to like 80 or 90 pounds. And so that's even more than you're spending on the 5 hats that you have at the start of the year. So a plain hat, they're getting a return on investment within like 9 months or something. And again, it's a project we've been in, for instance, Chesterfield Hospital for nearly like 5 years now. And they've never, because they have names and roles, it's also easier to then track, oh, well, if this person's hat broke, they would order another one for this person, have the same name and role. And thankfully, they've still not had to reorder for someone breaking their hat, which is very good. So that 5 years, again, that one person, if it's 500 a year, it's easily like 2,500, 3,000 hats. But again, put into meters, because once you spread out a normal kind of disposable hat, you're getting to like a quarter of a meter of fabric. It's like many thousands of meters of fabric that essentially you're saving from landfill or wherever else it ends up going.
And do you get much pushback? You know, if you're speaking to different NHS hospitals or different organisations.
Yeah, like
Yep.
surely people would be like, well, how am I going to get all of this washed? Or how does it surely they don't wash their own caps, do they? The NHS does that for them. But I'm sure in a manufacturing perspective, how would that work in that
Yeah,
situation?
you basically have a lot of options. There's some, for instance, midwives in the NHS. They actually take home their own uniform because they wash it, and they get also even tax incentives for washing it as well. So there's places in the NHS where if they wanted to bring that in, because midwives can obviously be in a surgical environment as well, then they can take home and wash their own hats. Again, it would obviously come under. Then we have people like Chesterfield that wash on site. And so they have a little laundry room, again, because you can fit 240 or so in one wash. That's effectively, by the end of the day, you can have one on wash, and people have 5 hats. So you can just keep wearing them and recycling them. And then we've been trying to figure out more and more how to do with external laundries. And so we have a few different solutions that we've been trialing for that as well. So the main problem is that there is never, again, similar to what I was saying before, there's not one person making this decision. And so what ends up happening is all of the silos then do the game theory of, well, what will the other person like? What can the other person object to? So infection control can object to people not knowing how to wash them. Finance can object to they've already spent all the money on disposable hats. So it's really about linking up the individuals and going, well, the value to you is, that you're going to save this in 5 years, or you're going to get your money back in 9 months. You do need to obviously plan out a kind of system for it. You can't just, again, the effect of just like buying a load of stuff. It comes next day and hooray, we've solved our problem. I think we're past, being able to just swap out, to like biodegradable pens or whatever. I think a lot of the things are now more like have to be more systematic, and they have to be championed by a few things. So the successful projects have essentially come from the people on the ground saying, I want this because it's going to improve patient outcomes, or, staff morale, or people even knowing each other because of, a lot of agency staff, knowing people's names, remembering people's names. The retention kind of goes up as well. So it's really linking it together and going like, also that we don't come with like a one size fits all solution. It's not to say like, just buy, you're buying this and then this will solve all of your things. It's to really find out, how is your process working? How are you doing things? And then being able to like integrate it into a kind of sensible way.
What happens to the caps at the end of their life when they do eventually start to deteriorate or break?
They can go into kind of clothes recycling because they're 100% cotton. So even our labels are cotton as well. So in terms of recycling of textiles, we're looking into it more. I'm doing trials at the moment with trying to compost them and seeing how long that would take. But again, it's really trying to unlock from the kind of waste disposal, because obviously these are all over the country. So while we would love to be able to have some sort of central hub, it also then doesn't come across as efficient if they then send like 10 caps back at a time to kind of be recycled. But we're also looking into like making them out of other textiles that are bigger, that are not used anymore. So drapes, things like that, because you don't need, again, like a crazy amount of fabric. So there's a lot of opportunity. And so it's really just about having a bit more kind of testing and trialing. And again, how they deal with their other waste streams, because there's obviously a lot of textiles in the NHS. There's a lot of like these key categories. So I think, yeah, it's my kind of plan for the next year to figure out what happens with all of that, and then and then figure out the best way to kind of implement a full like circular tracking of everything with RFID technology or other interesting elements like that.
Nice.
And how long have you been running Medicus
So
Caps?
it's been about 6 years now. Yeah, so it's kind of properly I say properly got going probably in the last three or 4 years. Obviously, just because COVID, it was mainly a lot of retail stuff, a lot of again because we have vets and dentists, it was more of like a selling to the actual people that are wearing them rather than whole organizations. So we've kind of been doing that the last kind of 4 or 5 years. So yeah, and it's just kind of going from strength to strength in terms of just the overall direction of everyone and like sustainability and especially all of these kind of networking events that now spring up all the time. And seeing the shift in the conversation is has been really nice from the kind of finger pointing to the wait, what are you doing? Oh, that's cool. Oh, I can do that. Oh, actually linking up and actually networking as opposed to being able to put people on fire. So
I've noticed a huge shift
Yeah.
in the last sort of 10 years. And one thing I noticed with the bigger organizations is 10 years ago when we were speaking to them, it would be somebody who had a certain role, and then it was like,
yeah,
oh, you're also doing sustainability for us. And it was kind of like, they
yeah,
don't know what they're doing, they don't have time, give me an easy win.
yeah,
Um, and now we're seeing so many more companies, really big and even small ones, where you've got someone and their whole role. It's just about how do we find ways to reduce our impact? How do we find better ways of doing stuff that we already do? Um, it's very interesting. So in like the last 6 years, has your view of success with what you're doing, has that changed much? Because initially it was, you were saying you were sort of like kind of like a side hustle, you wanted
yeah,
to have a family, and then
yeah,
I
yeah.
guess you sort of discovered, oh my god, there's a huge problem here we could be part of solving. Has your
It's
mindset changed, or?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting, interesting journey. I think because to give a bit more context, I guess, is I've kind of always been freelance. Funnily enough, a freelance sound recordist, so I obviously had to make sure my audio is okay today. Um, and so I've been kind of, just freelance myself in terms of like having a project, having a thing to do, having, a problem to solve kind of thing. But I was never the director or whatever, where it was like you just have to, be the one to actually come up with the idea. So thankfully, my wife did that with the hats, and I think really taking that, trying to like see. So success originally is obviously just, can you afford to stay open? That's great. Okay, good. Can you afford to grow? Okay, now you've got staff, and it just kind of keeps going from there in that kind of responsibility. But the kind of success factor is that thing of just trying to get that 1% improvement a day. I find that as I've gone on, the day just becomes about having like one successful thing. I don't know. It's really funny. It's like at the start, you're like trying to do so many things and there's so much stuff. And now success for me looks like in this one area, in this one bit of this whole thing that I'm trying to build, like we made this improvement, or, we got the LED lights, so we got, X, Y, and Z forward. And in sustainability, because the conversations have been kind of evolving more, I see it as a real space, especially in the UK, for competitive advantage, because how everything is going to be kind of commoditized because more and more people can do more and more things. And so the only things left are your commodities and your brands. And so, yes, you can make sugar water, but can you be Coca-Cola? And I think like the distinction there becomes like, then how much do you care? Which I think fits massively into sustainability, because I think people are genuinely going out there with their little thing, whatever they're doing, and they're saying like, this is, going to move, us a little bit further. And people will be like, that's great. And I want to choose my little thing, We can actually all build each other up rather than this weird, like, well, tall poppy syndrome or whatever. I'm not going to cut people down that are like doing really well in this one area. I'm going to go, that's great. Now, actually, that, links up with this, that, and the other. So, yeah, I'm not sure that answers the question, but success for me, I guess, is just like another step forward, like another 1% of like, we did one extra thing a bit better, or one more person was happy, or one more person, left a review, or that kind of thing.
What did you do before? Just out of interest.
Well, so I still do it. So I still do like sound recording on podcasts and interviews and kind of corporate events and bits and bobs. So I'm very interested as well in like how all these things link together, because I obviously come from a very unstructured, unsiloed kind of lifestyle. So it's really interesting going to these events where people like their sole project for the last like 5 years or whatever has just been on, how to reduce a bank's carbon footprint or something. I'm like wildly fascinated by all of that kind of stuff, and obviously listening. So I love listening to all sorts of people and things, and it's amazing the progress that's already happening. And I think people don't talk about it enough. It just becomes this like, oh, 2050, and now technically we're like over halfway to 2050, right? We're closer to 2050 than we are the year 2000, which makes me feel really old. So, so even though there's like this massive, like, and rightly so, I guess, doom and gloom on that side of things, if things don't change, I think there's a tremendous amount of progress that can change. And especially if people are voting with their kind of wallets with smaller businesses as well. Like if you're not happy with something, like, or you don't want to buy it on Amazon, like try and find the actual person that's like making it here. And then that can, all of that money, all of those people's jobs, et cetera, stay here. And, it only makes us all more resilient and essentially sustainable.
Yeah, I think it's a huge opportunity for people like you, and companies like yours to not just make a difference, but to make a business and make a life out of it. That's interesting. You look like, I feel like you enjoy what you do. It's a good sign.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think it's what was it? It was I always said that I had a lifestyle, not a career. So it's very much like the lifestyle is like finding the next thing. Like all of my projects that I do for sound, I'm essentially like fired at all of them until I like do the next one. I complete it, it's gone. Like that project's never coming back. And so all of my work then goes into like, well, what's the next thing? Or what's, how can I make this process better next time? How can I, do I need that piece of gear, that kind of thing? You can get caught up too much in it sometimes. Like it's not always, sometimes it's about doing all of those kind of fundamentals and I don't know if you have kids, but it's parenting seems like 90% of it is literally just like showing up. And then if you happen to have some like baby wipes or something, then, hallelujah. But half of it, like more than half is like just being there. So I feel it's very much like that, especially in small business when there's just so much to do that, at least you're here, trying to do your bit. And I think if more people start, even if it's from side hustles, making jam, making like just random things that kind of really excite them, either operationally, like me. So me, it's all about kind of figuring out, or you're kind of more the artist. Then I think, more people finding things that bring meaning to them and other people is only going to be a good thing, especially when it's never been easier. I mean, literally just go on ChatGPT and ask, how do I set up a jam business tomorrow? And then your formula for success is that you literally are just the person that cares the most about jam, because then you're going to resonate with all the customers that actually care about the jam. Because again, like I was saying before, if everything is just a commodity or a brand, you're either going to sort by price or buy the thing that you always know or have like been signaled to. That's why you don't really change toothpaste, or why they don't just have one toothpaste. Surely they've solved the toothpaste problem now. Maybe not. Now there's still like 39 toothpaste. So it's that funny, I love all those kind of analogies and stuff. So, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked as always.
No.
Well, it's interesting.
I love it.
Yeah.
So I wondered, what's one thing you know now that you wish you'd known when you'd started Medicus Caps?
Good question, isn't it?
Ooh, very good question. I think it's really hard to pin down for me. I'm leaning towards something like it's going to take a long time, but I'm trying to like phrase it positively or something. Maybe like you're gonna, I don't know. I don't know. I think following your kind of dreams is a kind of practical way to approach life. I think following your gut, following like what you, because it sounds crazy, right? You both have, if like we both had jobs, we both were like happy in our jobs. It wasn't even that we were unsatisfied with our jobs. We were just kind of like, well, if I'm working 12 hours a day, you're working 12 hours a day. You can't really work like raise a child on the weekend kind of thing. So it was that thing of let's just do this and see where it goes. And um, I don't know, but I feel that's a bit of a cop out because that's maybe why I set it up in the first place. But I guess my number one lesson out of everything, if I was to like start something again, is that following your kind of passion and stuff is actually has actually never been more practical with the amount of kind of
Yeah.
tools and people and things the kind of connections you can make. I think it's actually never been more practical to follow it. And also optimism. I have to say, like, it's again coming back to the fact of it's so easy to, be just overwhelmed by, having to change the whole world. That being optimistic as much as possible and just taking those small wins it just gives you again, it's so much more rewarding than being like, oh now I've only got, 99% to go. Now I've only got 98% to go. Instead, it's flipping the ladder and building up, I guess. So hopefully that answers it. It felt like a bit of a cop out, but I'm
No,
sure
I
I've
I know
learned
what
too
you're
many
saying.
things.
It
But
sounds like
yeah,
I think you're a very positive person, and that
yeah,
that
yeah, I
that
think you
works,
have to
doesn't
be.
it? Like
I think it does.
it's kind of like law of attraction. Like what you believe happens, I think. And
Yeah. Well, and now there's more and more like scientific evidence of like people that are focusing just on their problems grow in terms of like it becomes you are living your life through just your like your
yeah,
camera
yeah,
or whatever. And if you're going to a house party and you go to one part of the room and people are having a terrible time, well, you can take away that it was a terrible house party or whatever. But if you're in
yeah,
another place and you have an interesting conversation, so I think there's a lot to do with perspective, and I think fundamentally a lot of stuff can almost you can even if I guess you're just tricking yourself slightly, they can be solved in terms of like trying to look for like what is that silver lining, and if the underlying thing is like I survived today, then or I'm above ground, then that's you're only winning at that point. So getting a chance to kind of play in the kind of game of business is exciting.
yeah. And I think you're genuinely working, for a purpose that's greater than yourself, and
Yeah.
I think that really comes across. So you did have a family in the end then.
Yes,
After
yeah, two
yeah,
kids. Yeah. So they're
congratulations.
six and nine now. So it's yeah, and it's kind of crazy going from, just doing this in our house to like having an actual studio, not just a green field. So
oh,
so yeah,
thought you were in the
Giant
field.
grass.
yeah, that's it. So yeah, so yeah, it's kind of getting there. And again, it's a lot of work, and I think if you're going to get into a kind of business or something, the kind of stakes should also be that you're trying to do something that is fundamentally difficult or going to take a long time, because I kind of feel like there'd be nothing worse than kind of getting five years into something and being like, well, I
Yeah,
guess this is what happens with a normal job, right? Or a career ladder that has a limit and that kind of stuff. You get to the top and you're like, well, okay, now what? The next 70 years, I just do this. This is crazy. That's like insanity to me. I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to kind of complete life. So I really like the challenge of it, and especially more and more, I guess, once you get like more staff and things, it's like trying to figure that out as well, because that's definitely a leveling up. It's one thing to again do stuff for yourself. I guess it's just like before having kids or before having a wife or whatever. If you're just single and there's kind of almost, it feels like there's zero consequences to absolutely everything. So yeah, so it's also coming, I guess, growing up as well, which helps. Has to happen at some point, I guess.
I think the progress aspect is really important, like you said.
Yeah.
That's I think big part of fulfillment. Can I ask? So you had a family, and
Yeah,
obviously you set this business up, and they're kind of interlinked.
yeah.
Do you feel a greater sense of purpose from having a family or from the business?
I think, yeah, I think from both, and I think it is that thing of clarity. I think in some ways, I think, especially for me, again, not being, I'm kind of better directed. I just know myself that I'm just better directed around like, okay, what is the like task or what are the restraints rather than that then I need to like work in to like solve this thing. So I think, yeah, parenting chaos perfectly fits into that. And then. And then business is nice because we can adapt within the business. So if there's whatever's happening, there's always a new challenge to solve or a new person with a new question, and it's like, oh, let's find out more about this. Or we don't obviously have the top end spec of like all the machines, and so you're just trying to make it work with what you have. So within that, and again, coming back to it's just trying to find trying to find the things and like live your life with the things that bring you the most joy means that obviously working all hours of the day, but I still wake up at 6 and get to drop the kids off to school and then, work till 9 till 3, have 3 hours with them and then work like 6 till 12 and then do the whole process again. So on the optics of it, even though it looks like it's like crazy, I'm actually trying to just maximize the most that I can get out of each area that's kind of fulfilling, I guess. And I think the conversation just generally around work-life balance, I just think that there is just life, and it's just some people prefer to work more, and that's fine, and some people prefer to live more, whatever that means. And I think again, more and more, there's more opportunities to make that kind of work, especially if you're trying to make your own side hustles as well.
It sounds like you've made a life that you don't need to like go on holiday 3 times a year to escape from it.
Because every day is a holiday.
Yeah, that's
No,
it.
but you just said you enjoy
Yeah.
every day, and
Yeah.
that's like the ultimate goal, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think like there's obviously definite underpinnings. Like I'm so glad that, you have your health, you have all these things. I mean, you only have to look at the news, there's all like life can just change. So again, I feel like in a really like privileged situation, not that it didn't take a tremendous amount of work, but I guess this is where I insert the part about luck. And obviously, although it feels slightly weird to say like COVID was lucky, but there's certain things that kind of galvanize your experience in life. And again, and then just being able to just narrow down the options and just go like, look, I can do 6 billion things in this world, but then I'll never get round to them. So what are the things that I actually want to kind of move forward with? What are what kind of difference do I want to make? As you have kids and stuff, you do start to think more a bit about a kind of legacy, because essentially they are your legacy in a weird way of like you're trying to develop this person, which is kind of insane. So yeah. I'm not sure. I've again wandered off from the question completely, but
I was going to say, so you kind of touched on it. We don't really talk about this much, but a lot of people listening are kind of like founders or they're working in
yeah,
startups, and that's most people in the kind of the impact scene, I guess. But um, it's often quite a tough job. I
yeah,
think work-life balance, burnout is very common.
yeah.
Kind of feels like you're quite healthy. It feels like you have a good balance with this.
I mean,
What is your secret?
Yeah,
What are you,
because I
like a
mean,
vampire or
sorry,
something?
just before you answer that, you just mentioned about like, you get up at 6, you drop the kids off, and then you work, and then you spend time with the kids, and then you work, and I'm like, that sounds pretty intense, but he's smiling and he's loving life.
I mean, there's definitely. I should definitely get some sort of a coffee sponsor, kind of insert into that just to get that through. That's probably my drug of choice, as it were. But yeah, I don't know. There's kind of. I think it is. Look, it is hard, and I think I just take it back to my perspective of realistically, if you have any sort of business, whether small, large, or whatever, there are just going to be issues. Like there's just going to be problems. Like the thing I can guarantee is like when you wake up, there will be problems. But I don't know, if it feels like that's you have to kind of I don't know, what do they say? It's like you're playing offense rather than defense. So I think I live my life like trying to like go towards those things rather than like solve for them. It's like I think a lot of people it becomes a lot easier to go, well, I have this problem, why don't I just try and defend myself from it? And it's not going to happen. But I think trying to kind of proactively go towards those problems also gives you a kind of accountability and some sort of feeling of control for me personally. It's just if I am the one that is like has made a decision or like has decided on whatever, the external variable is, and I've had to choose between A, B, C, or the whole alphabet, and I've made a choice, well, then it's like at least it's on my terms of like going forward for this thing. Because realistically as well, the you if you want to if you just want a job or you just want whatever, like there's never been more probably like entry level jobs. I always just think like the worst thing that can happen to me is that you just end up at a fast food restaurant or something, and you just, again, for me, I think because now I've kind of seeing how it's made or whatever with the kind of business world, I feel like I would just start another business. I wouldn't be able to like retire now. Retirement's just not going to happen. So I think now that the stakes have kind of never been so low in terms of like you don't have to invest all this crazy capital, in your jam business or whatever. You don't have to go, okay, well, I'm going to make, tomorrow I'm just going to order 10,000 jams and then I'm just going to try and sell 10,000 jams. It's like, no, you just start making one and, you just build from there. It doesn't have to be this crazy all stakes thing. So I think it just comes down a lot to like perspective. And I think you really just need to build up that kind of internal grit. And I guess self-esteem that you're like capable to do it and you're almost the only one to do it. And if you weave in that kind of caring aspect of it, then you realize that a lot of people, if we were to take everything that you interact with, a lot of people don't care about a lot of stuff in a way of like, they don't really care how their car was made or like who put it together or whatever. It's just that people are looking and operating on outcomes. And so I think if you can like care about the outcome that you want for whatever your customer is, then ultimately you're gonna win.
I think like
So again,
sometimes,
hopefully that answered some of
it did.
I think more in like broad random thoughts than
I
succinct
think
answers.
with you going from that side hustle to turning it like full time, so many people I think struggle with that, and maybe perhaps that is just that like confidence thing, that needing that, having that kind of full time salary as the kind of fallback just in case. Whereas what they really want to do is, I don't know, what would you say to those people?
I would say that the transition can come in many forms. I think one is like what are your like literally I guess the math of it is just like what is your income, what is your outcome, and so are you trying to save? What do you need in terms of like making that possible? And then from there it's about it's about just doing that side hustle until it starts to become to a certain point where you can move over, or it becomes a part of, well, I'm just gonna, like I've been doing, I've kept doing sound recording even now, and that funds still a lot of the other improvements that go into the business, and the business is acting more as its own thing. Obviously it employs like 7 people, so there's still kind of stakes there, but it's for me it was about, well, this is going into the business. It's not going into just my get rich quick scheme kind of. A lot of people see business as a like means to an end of just like financial fulfillment, but I would say that's like saying that you want to parent so you have more free time. It's kind of like, it's not really, you don't really have more free time if you're just like a stay-at-home mum or whatever. Like if you're a stay-at-home parent, you don't have more free time. You've just literally, you've got all of your time taken.
You have no free time.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you might not have a job, but or like whatever. You know what I mean? It's like you're solving the wrong problem again. So I think, yeah, side hustles, I would just take all of your learnings, and realistically, if you have a job, then that means that role is solving a particular problem. And so there's also side steps you can do where you go, look, I'm doing this job now, which clearly people pay me for and find value, I could do this more on the side as consulting. There's, again, you don't have to go off with my crazy jam analogy and set up your jam company. You can just go, I am, an expert in procurement at the moment. Why don't I just post some stuff on LinkedIn about what I'm thinking about and then see if I can do some consulting or, consult in a different area because I've seen a certain problem solved.
I think it sounds like you are very good, maybe naturally, at like reframing, problems and setbacks as what's on the other side of that.
Yeah,
I think that's
I
what,
think you have
and
to.
I think because you're doing something that's bigger than yourself, and you're good at that. I think you're good at overcoming the problems. But I think problems that are what are required to get progress, right? Like you can't get any progress without, you know, being hit with a few problems. So yeah.
That's very true. Yeah, yeah. And that's it. And no one is number one in business, right? Even the biggest businesses. They were not there's all of the biggest businesses are the ones that were here now. There wasn't, oh, that one, that guy ages ago, he like won business. I don't know, maybe the guy who owned the pyramids or whatever, but he's like not here.
The
Right. So
jam guy.
It's that jam
yeah,
guy.
that's it. That's it. Strawberry jam guy. The royalties on strawberry jam must be like astronomical. But no one that's the other thing. It's like you're going into this thing where you're ultimately you're only going to win in the process. You're not going to like even if you like get all the way to the end and you've done like legacy and like people have taken it over or whatever. The point is that we only have like a finite amount of time, right? So the idea is just trying to enjoy that process as much as you can and set yourself up for success as well. Like if you find that you're not particularly strong at one area, that's probably the first hire that you should do because you're like, look, you don't have at the start, you have to be everything to like know your business, but you then shouldn't be like trying to solve you should then just have like a more holistic view of like the direction of where you want things to go. And then you've just got to kind of trust in your people. So yeah, which is also another whole, I mean, that's a whole topic again of HR and just trying to, get everyone else on board with like mission and culture and that kind of thing. But hopefully it leads at least from the top. So
Okay, final question. So we wanted to kind of get in your head a bit with this. So, in your
yeah,
world,
yeah.
um, where where would you like to see the world, your world, in 10 years? So Medicus Caps, so 2035.
2035. So I would like to see us, I'm gonna say like have the whole supply chain. So I would like to be able to, or at least like be on the ground, like actually know where the cotton is being made that then goes to the factory that then goes to, actually like having that whole supply chain, I think is just really important for all of the things that we've spoken about before, not only for business reasons, but sustainability and again, improving like that whole process. And then I just think I don't I'm not quite sure what else. I think the main thing is just to be able to get to a point where we kind of own the whole process of it and just being able to make that better and better. Again, I don't really want to give like an ending of where where I want to be in case I actually hit it. So I will keep it kind of vague at that point, I think. And I think obviously there's so many more interesting things with AI and like who knows what's going to be possible as well in terms of delivery of things, virtual try-ons, being able to track. I've already seen things where they've used, for instance, there's charities that have mapped all of the ships live in the ocean. And what they do is then as a charity, they have a central base and they literally call up governments and say like this ship over here is doing this trawling pattern, like, send out the Coast Guard to like intercept them and stuff. So I guess so to bring it back, I guess, to the world is just I hope for a more transparent world and I hope for a more like nuanced world. I feel like we've come from a world of information of like black and white and this is the answer and like that's the thing. And I think there's not enough talk about gray because it's hard because people want to kind of you obviously have to make a coherent argument one way or another on any kind of subject. But like work-life balance, for example, it's really mushy to say like, well, just have both. or it's really mushy to say like you can't have, one without the other or this, that. So I think there's a lot more conversations that I think need to be had, and I would be interested to hear more people kind of talk about. And I think actually just bringing it back, transparency, but also people sharing their own journey. I think there's a lot of value, like the value you would have found from doing this podcast. You find so many kind of different perspectives, and you're the ones that have like, you get to amalgamate it all, unless someone's listening. You're on episode like 50 now or something, Nelly?
Something like that.
Yeah.
But
It's like a lot of, exactly. It's a lot of like hours and prep and research, but all of that, if everyone was sharing like their own little thing in their own podcast, again, in their own niche or whatever they're interested in, I think we would accelerate a lot of people's progress. Because I think a lot of people are worried about, being excited about scrub caps. I don't know. You kind of revert back to like school and be like, oh, well, no one's going to care about my little scrub cap company. And, da, 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 da. And it's like, oh, why should I bother? Because there's already, that $1 trillion like manufacturer that can like make these hats and da, da, da. So, yeah. So I think a more transparent, optimistic world where anything is possible. How about that?
It's an exciting answer, because I do feel like, the world is a lot more transparent now, and people are sharing their stories more, and they are, putting content out there. It's a lot easier to learn. So I could, it's exciting. Good answer. I think that's a wrap then. It was great to have you on, Matt, and it was really nice to hear a bit more about your story and to get inside your mind. Seem very positive.
It takes a long time, but being freelance, I'm very used to, you have to go through like a lot of rejection, a lot of stuff at the start. You're starting with nothing. You have to buy all this equipment that costs like thousands of pounds, and you're like, how am I going to do it? I did, for instance, when I was starting, I first got my jobs. My mum had like at that point. We've slowly been moving north most of my life, so it's ended up in Dundee,
Right.
so an hour and a half above Edinburgh. And I used to do jobs where in London for like these short films, and I used to take the megabus, it's an 11-hour journey. So from Dundee to London. So I would take that bus at like 8 p.m., get to London for like 7 a.m. to start a short film at like 8 a.m., finish at whatever. And then, so I'd be doing like these 36-hour, I'd sleep on the bus, obviously, but it's like a 36-hour day just to do this like one film for like 50 quid or whatever. And it's just long. You just have to be like, look, I'm gonna just die trying this. This is like, whatever I do, I'm gonna be here. I can't half and half do it. I have to just like do it all, or I'm just going to do something else, because again, I think a lot of people can get potentially into that trap of being comfortable is almost a trap in itself, because realistically, again, if you think about just getting old in general, like life is just going to get harder health wise and all this kind of stuff. So right now, if you're feeling good, if you're feeling like, look, I can like do some damage on whatever problem or whatever thing I want to do, then like now is the time to do it. Like now, like not even, 5 years, next week, whatever. Like if you want to go out and be like, look, actually, I care about my health now. I'm just going to do a run. Be like those guys that I'm just going to run to the lamppost, and then next time I'm going to run 2 lampposts, and then next time I'm going to run, couch to 5K or whatever. And I think again with all this technology, and you've got these the crazy AIs that you can strategize with, and like won't judge you for your jam obsession. Maybe 2035, I'm going to have a Medicus jam just because of the whole podcast, just to prove anything is possible. Made out of the compost of the cotton of the hats or something. So yeah.
Nice.
Amazing. But thank you so much for having me on. It was really, really interesting.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the podcast. We hope it was truly
Earth your while.
For more information, visit reusable.co.uk/Earth Your While.
And if you'd like to appear on the next series of Earth Your While, please email media@reusable.co.uk.